Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is May 9, 2023. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Kennon B. Rains. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes, Kennon B. Rains, as I live and breathe.
That's a cool name. Where in the heck you calling in from, Kennon?
Hollywood, California.
Oh, how cool. I'm in Venice, so let's start. What's the best thing for a human being?
To be in a healthy environment and to feel loved.
I like both of those. Healthy environment and to be loved. What is your favorite
Some of
form?
us are loved, but we don't know it. So I think
Ooh,
to feel loved is even better than to be loved because then you're aware of it.
to feel it? Yeah. Well, a great homeless Venetian, Eden Abe, he wrote a song called Nature Boy. Nat King Cole made it a hit.
I love it.
Line goes, the greatest thing you'll ever learn is to love and be loved in return.
True. It's
Yeah,
true.
it's a good one.
Life is the school, love is the lesson.
Oh, God, that's good. Who said that?
I don't know. I have it in a bumper sticker and I've just kept it. I used to write it on the chalkboard all the time when I was teaching kids at school.
Oh, I like that. What is your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Talking with people.
Yeah. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
To try to hold on to their identity.
Nice. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
For me, I feel it's innate. I think we want to know, we want to understand who are we, where did we come from, what are we doing here, where are we going next.
Yep.
So every little thing we collect along the way is, I think, in some way trying to figure that out.
Yep. I agree. Do thoughts create emotions?
Definitely.
Yeah. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
Hear it coming out of my mouth. I have very little filter. People have told me so many times, learn to think before you speak, learn when to close your mouth. But that's how it just goes blah, blah, blah.
The question's based on the very answer you gave. Marcia McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion said, I don't know what I think until I write it. Can humans think without language?
Probably because thinking and feeling kind of overlap and merge.
Yeah.
And because animals seem so communicative in a human way with us without language. I mean, they might figure out what we're saying from body language or recognizing certain patterns, but I think thinking and feeling are something that's kind of like nebulous and undefinable, like where we're going after here.
Really well put. You anticipate a question coming up, so I appreciate that. And Chomsky says a language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do? What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Then I tend to get emotionally expressive. But one thing I wanted to share that what you said made me think of, and it was one of my favorite things that got my attention in my college days. We were studying Antonin Artaud's Theater Without Words, Theater of Cruelty. He was the poet without words. And he had something in this book I read about him said that in the beginning, when we first said a word, we were connecting to the thing. We saw a rock and we said rock. We saw a tree and we said tree, and we were having a spiritual communion with it. But after that, when it became a repetition, it was just, he said rock, that's a rock. She said rock, that's a tree, tree, rock, and we had lost our magnetic connection to what things really were by the repetition of words without really communing with the thing that made us say the word the first time we said it. And
That is
that was, I thought, really meaningful to me.
by the repetition. That's very good. But when you introduced Artaud, you said he was the poet without words?
They called him the poet without words, and he had the theater of cruelty, Anthony Artaud.
Yes, the poet without words. I like that.
We studied him in college, and that's where I first learned about him in theatrical studies.
Here's the question you anticipated. Your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
I think we feel more than we think.
Yeah.
It's obvious by the situations and messes we get ourselves into that we often react with feelings and fears and emotions before we really think things through.
Yeah. Two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
I imagine so. That thing that's not the body is what does the thinking and is the soul. So I kind of think they would go together.
Yeah. The second Turing is, can machines think?
Oh, I loathe AI and all that's it's bringing. And they're proving that they can. They can write essays. They can take everybody's job. They can rule the world, and they can get rid of people so that, a few elite can survive the Holocaust we bring upon ourselves. But I don't know. It's an algorithm. It's not really. It can't be. I don't know if it can be self-aware. If it can be spiritually, like, what is it? The unexamined life is not worth living. Can AI really examine itself?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's the good question to ask chatbot is, can you examine yourself, Mr. Chatbot?
Yeah.
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
One without the other isn't a whole lot.
Yeah. Brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
That's something else we'll find out when we get to the end of the physical life, I think. But I think it might be 50-50. I
Yeah.
think, in the beginning was the word, and our thoughts become things, create our reality. We attract the things we think about. We create things by our own expectations. And yet, one of the things I saw on one of these PBS specials about how Earth came about, whether it was the Big Bang, this, that, or the other, was like 6 or 12 different scientists giving their ideas, and they were all different: parallel universe, Big Bang, this, that, and the other. And then one of them, the last one that really blew my mind, it said that we were just these kind of virtual reality beings in somebody's higher being's video game. And that just was, oh my God. I was like, I didn't think about that. So maybe there's some higher beings are watching us and trying to turn us into more higher beings and evolve us up to their level.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes. And maybe it is just, we've gone through 6 mass extinctions, and everything that we think is God and punishing us and the flood is nothing but nature and our imaginings.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yet Lily Tomlin said reality's just a collective hunch.
Yes, that's very good. Very good.
What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
light, I guess.
The poet Audre Lorde said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools." Her colleague Yvonne Rainer said, "You can if you expose the tools." What new tool do you suggest?
People's self-empowerment, believing in themselves, standing together, creating a movement. I've gotten caught up in so many movements, and at the end of the day, a lot of times you're left feeling like, well, that didn't change anything. But it still seems like the main tool that we have is trying to stand up and confront things.
I love that. Self-empowerment. That is a good tool to suggest. Thank you. Kennon, what new toy do you suggest?
Toy, toy, a new one. Oh, something that would always bring you back to a positive thought.
Oh, God, that's a good toy.
Yeah.
What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
If I've been a good enough person, did I say something rude or hurtful? Have I been short-sighted or faithless in some way?
Wow. This is fun. You're good, man. You're helping me stay positive and hopeful.
I was born that way. I've gotten away from it sometime, but through faith, through meditation, through reading a lot of the books I read. Florence Scovel Shinn. Have you ever heard of her? Oh my
No.
God. She wrote books in the 1920s that these Edwardian artists and the East Village 80s brought me one of her books. They lived as Edwardians in an abandoned building and dressed as Edwardians, and they became pretty famous artists in the East Village. But they went to this same little church that I went to, and they brought me one of her books called Your Word is Your Wand. And there was another one, The Game of Life and How to Play It. And she wrote like 5. They're all very slim, about the width of your finger, the spine, your pinky finger. And but they were so positive, and they reinforced everything that I was raised to believe growing up, Methodist, but only the best parts of the Bible that were very positive, that said, believe it and you can make it happen. And her books were just brilliant, and it reminded me of who I was as a child, and it brought me back into that, and it's kept me returning to that again and again throughout my whole life.
Beautiful title.
Sometimes, but I basically know that's the main truth.
Oh, we're going to get into truth too. That's good. But what is the title of the book? Your Word is Your Want?
Wand, W-A-N-D.
Wand. What a great title. And spell her last name.
It's Florence Scovel, S-C-O-V-E-L, and the last name is Shinn, S-H-I-N. I think it's 2 N's, N-N. Florence Scovel Shinn.
Thank you. I'll look her up. That's beautiful. Marshall McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might be able to cope with what we don't like about our inventions.
Say that last sentence again before the cope
Well,
part.
yes.
Where the antenna, and then what becomes between that and
then the artists are broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, like the unintended consequences.
Yes.
So that we might be able to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Totally self-indulgence, greed, and lower consciousness.
Yeah.
I remember since around 11 years old, first hearing about Ralph Nader and overpopulation and seat belts and potato chips and everything that they started talking about when I was a kid, that were things that weren't good for us, things that we needed to be protecting ourselves from. And I remember even at that age going, "What's wrong with people? What's wrong?"
Do artists have moral obligation?
Yes.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Hmm. I should. The old ones I'm not as afraid of because I think we've thought about them longer. The new ones, I'm always afraid of something new sometimes. Where people, my first instinct is everything we've invented to make life easier has only made something else worse. So I'm skeptical of everything new going, I think in my heart somewhere there's an Amish Quaker somewhere, that
Yeah.
in those lifetimes long ago that still goes, I don't know, maybe should have just left well enough alone.
Left well enough alone. That is a great one. Left well. I have to write that one down because I really want to look that up. So, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
I remember getting a spanking. I think I was around 3 or 4. I had wandered off. My grandfather had a trailer at Colonial Beach, and I had decided I really wanted to go to the beach and see him. And my parents found me several blocks away from the house. And they said, "What are you doing here? You scared us to death. Where are you going?" And they always loved to remind me. I said, "I'm going to the beach. I'm going to see Pawpaw. I'm going to the beach. I'm going to see Pawpaw." And then I got a spanking.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It's a blessing if you put it into perspective because
Yeah.
it's part of living a self-examined life. You have to look at yourself and where your patterns came from because even if you ignore them, they don't really go away. You're still
Yeah.
living from them.
Yeah. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model, and what specifically was that impact?
My mother's mother, Granny Harlow, a very positive, funny woman. She loved to play games. She was a very spiritual person. She loved to go to church, but not on holidays. And I would be like, "Why can't we go on a holiday? That's the biggest, exciting one." And she goes, "No, indeed. I'm not going to go see all those holiday Christians just coming to show off a new hat and a dress." And I liked that about her, that she was funny. In a time of great prejudice, she was not. And, uh, and she was fun to be with.
Fun. Key word, fun and positive. How cool. Now, outside your immediate family, same question.
From how long ago or from right now?
And you do it any context you want. Yeah.
Hmm. There's so many great people. Well, from childhood, I was very inspired by Jesus. In my adolescence, I was inspired by Martin Luther King and Ralph Nader, and friendships. I've had one friend since this, I guess, 1980 from Atlanta days. My friend Henry. I think I'm never happier than when I hang out with him because he's the most polite person I know, and that doesn't always come naturally to me. I'm a fire sign. He is too. That amazes me. We're both fire signs, but he's always polite. He's always chill.
How cool is that? Really good. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Methodist.
And did you, or do you pray?
Yes.
If God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Welcome home.
That's beautiful. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think it's damaged.
Yeah,
Damaged souls. Damaged souls can be very evil. They're
yeah,
acting out and they're so caught up in self-loathing and self-pity that they keep stirring up more and more angst, and fear is the greatest evil. And the more you're afraid of, the more stink you're going to create.
yeah. The hidden question really is, Kennon, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'm going to set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I do that when someone really disgusts me. They don't exist. If I walk by them, I don't make eye contact. I can make someone feel like they totally don't exist because I refuse to see them or hear them or even acknowledge they're there. And I know that that is not really the best way to treat people and deal with it. But if someone really I've had enough of, that's what I'll do. The other statements that everybody said, I resonate with each one of them and think that is so cool what they said. And it's true.
Yeah.
The Bible says, kill them with kindness. It's like heaping hot coals on their head. It's kind of like a sick way of saying, be really kind because they'll really hate it, you know?
Ram Dass said, I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush. It's like fill in the blank,
Right.
I'm having a real hard time loving, James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Because we learn and evolve through repetition, because we have to go through the same mistakes so many times before we even recognize what we're doing. We forget things so easily. And to really indoctrinate something into our souls, sometimes we have to go through many lifetimes or constant experiences of it in this lifetime before we finally really catch on.
Yeah.
It's like commercials, they repeat it. That's why commercials work, because they repeat it and repeat it and repeat it till you repeat it like a catchphrase when you hear part of it in conversation.
Yeah. So walk me through just briefly your callings. Like you're pursuing poetry, performance art, you're pursuing being an educator. What was the tipping points where you said, that's what I'm going to do? I want to do that. Like, what did you study in college, and did that lead you towards those two callings?
I signed up to the major in social work, and then we did a play my senior year, and I went, I'll become a nervous wreck doing social work, but a play, I really will love that. And you can still teach lessons and try to create some kind of consciousness raising things through the arts and through plays. So I changed my major 6 months before I went to college, and I majored in acting. But one of the guys I was studying with when I moved to Atlanta said, you're tall, you're big, you're strong, you're aggressive. You probably won't get many parts. Parts for young women are all ingenues, and you're just not an ingenue. You probably won't really be successful till you're in your 50s. And I thought, there really weren't that many parts. And then even when you knocked yourself out and got in a play, sometimes you didn't even care what the playwright had to say or being with those particular people, but that was just a play you could get into. So I started writing my own poetry because in college we had an oral interpretation class and we had to memorize poems and stuff. And for one of my auditions to get into the elite company class, I hadn't had a bunch of monologues memorized. I was lazy. And the only thing I had memorized at hand was this poem by, I think, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing her last name right, Diane Wojciechowski. Anyway, she wrote these raging poems like Dancing on the Grave of a Son of a Bitch to My Motorcycle Betrayer. So that's the poem I did. And it got into the company, and the play was just primal. It was about the origins of theater coming from the religious leaders acting out their beliefs in the mythic consciousness to initiate people into the religion. So when I was in Atlanta doing plays, we did a play that had poets planted in the audience to pop up and during this Dadaist play, shout poetry different places. One of the off nights when the theater was closed, she was in town. Another time, Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky and Michael McClure came in town, did poetry readings on the nights the theater was not doing the play. And I just started singing poetry as a way I could still be an actress, a performer. I thought, well, maybe I won't be a great poet, but I know that I can make the poem become more alive than the way she did this. Her poem, I mean, what a title, Dancing on the Grave of a Son of a Bitch to My Motorcycle Betrayer. But she read it like an Earth Mother, quiet, soft little mouse. And I thought, wow, she really can write, but she doesn't know how to present it. And I thought, I might not know how to write, but I know how to take those words and make them fly. So that's
Wow.
what got me into it.
That really well put.
Well,
I really
had to write my own so that I could, have something to do for myself.
Yeah, but we're going to delve into poetry now, but I want to ask you, who were you seeing growing up that attracted you to pursue theater? Was it live theater? Was it TV? Was it movies? Or was it somewhere else?
TV and movies.
Say some of the actresses or people who you saw that says, oh, I want to do that.
Oh, Betty Davis. I loved her. I loved all the old movies. I liked Susan Hayward. I loved Katharine Hepburn. I loved Rita Hayworth and Maureen O'Hara. And
yeah,
I loved stories that touched my heart, the ones that just really would get you and you'd think that it was almost like a sermon to watch the movie.
Yeah. Really good. So a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play when you're writing a poem?
I'm kind of bombastically about intention. I'm always like, as one of my favorite drag queen friends said, we're both closet preachers. And a lot of people that hate my poetry would be like, oh, I don't want to hear a message. I don't want to hear your views. I don't want to hear your politics. I don't want to hear your rhymes. I don't want it to be so clear and plain and laid out. But when I first got into the poetry scene and people would be more obtuse or obscure and really poetic and, make you have to find your way through it, I would be thinking, fuck that. What are you really trying to say? If you're going to make it that hard for me to figure out what you're saying, why are you even talking to me?
You go, girl. That is good. It's so Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your listener or your reader when you're writing your poem?
Probably a little more than I should, but I generally get caught up in what I want to say. And I will think about how can I make them understand it or hear it the way I want them to accept it.
Yeah. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness or human sensorium, like knife and fork extend our teeth, shutter in a camera is extension of our eyelid. Even non-tangibles, say philosophy or religion, might be an extension of consciousness. What does the writing utensil extend for you? Whether it's a pen or a keyboard, what humanness does it extend?
My mind.
Yeah. What's the function of poetry?
To stir the human heart, to wake people up or to make them feel something, to inspire them.
Yeah. Leo Bersani studied the poet Mallarmé. He said the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. I'm always trying to figure out what that means. And I know there's some harsh words there like crises and threatens, but I'm curious your thoughts on that. And I can repeat it.
I agree with that. I remember once someone introduced me in my poetry by saying, she uses her anger to write, she exercises her anger through her writing. Things that would upset me, things that made me angry, things that just freaked me out, those would always bring me to a piece of paper with something to write with. anything. Tear open. I remember, just once I got something got me, and I was at the time a smoker, and I remember tearing open a pack of cigarettes just to find a piece of paper on the inside wrapper to write on, because something stirs you. And when I share a poem with an audience, I want to share it from the same point of feeling that made me write it.
Wow. That is back to Mallarmé completely. He said, don't paint the thing itself, paint the effect it produces.
Right.
Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
you use it to resolve confusion.
Wow, to resolve confusion. That is heavy. I've never heard that.
Well, people always say be polite and don't express it. Keep the party polite. Just let it slide. But for me, I'm always like, isn't there something under that carpet? Maybe we should just rip that up and see what's under there and see if there's something that we need to talk about to resolve something, so that we don't have this same butting of heads or confrontation in the future.
That's
You have to pick your battles. I don't always know when to do that.
well, that reminds me of the reinterpretation of the Wizard of Oz to the Wizard of Us.
Oh.
And you brought this up in advertising, that what do they require, Judy Garland to Dorothy to go get is the skywriting utensil. That's advertising. Create the disease and offer the cure. And then when she takes it to the wizard, what happens? The dog pulls the curtain back, like look under the rug, and reveals that's phone, that's fake, and that's like artist, the Wizard of Us, US.
But what really finally gets her home? Just repeating it. There's no place like home.
Right.
You have to have a mantra. You have to meditate. You have to get your mind to that point to know what your clue is, what it is you need to bring yourself back to. And then you just have to say it and fake it till you make it. Just keep bringing yourself back to that point till you finally make it.
You packed a lot in it. Fake it till you make it. That is the most watched TED Talk. Fake it till you make it. Yeah.
Who does that one?
I don't know who does it, but yeah, you can. It's easily Googleified by one click.
I spend as much time away from my computer as possible.
No, that's smart too. Yeah, but there's no place like home. So, anyways, to complete the thought is that's what Toto is. The dog represents the artist, the poets. They're pulling the curtain back. Really good. So let's go on that truth thing. You said truth earlier. Louis Buñuel said, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Now, 90% of people I say that quote to go, oh, that's right. And one person finally says, that's bullshit. If I'm going to seek something, it's because I want to find it. So the cliche goes, the journey's more important than the destination. Why do we have to name or seek a destination if the journey's more important?
For me, what I think people disagree with about his comment is not so much whether it's the journey or where you get to, but when people start telling you they know something, watch out.
Yeah.
The only thing you can really know is that you don't know everything. If you're not willing to question that sometimes, then you're going to end up with some. I know I've been a zealot in other lifetimes, and those are dangerous people. They can be handy, but I like Gandhi. He says there's no God higher than truth. And you can't tell anybody what God is, and you can't tell anybody else what their truth should be. So seek it by all means. Keep looking for it forever and perfecting your awareness of it. But when people start putting it down, that's what it gets me about Bible beaters. once people, they want it in a book, they want it to be black and white, and then I
Yeah.
never have to think. I can look up on page 47 and it's told to me, and I don't have to think, and it doesn't have to change. And I'm like, whoa, that's so dangerous. You know, you gotta have to, be on your toes and think things through. You can't look for everything. Even the Bible contradicts itself, and you have to take things in perspective for the moment and what's the context.
Really well put. Yeah. In fact, that you evoked a Bob Dylan line. He said, "Don't ever tell anyone everything you know." And it's like, I meet you at, I think we met at Linda Albertano's wake
Memorial.
service.
Yeah, we met because
Memorial.
I saw I listened to your interview with her, and I had emailed you, and then I met you afterwards. But I
Yeah.
just was looking and listening to everything Linda Albertano on the internet I could after she passed, because
Yeah.
I missed her so much. And your interview with her was so just one of the best interviews anybody could ever want to hear. And in fact, leading up to this, I was really nervous and intimidated, going, "You'll never touch Linda. You'll never touch Linda. She is just brilliant."
Oh,
I'm
you're doing
hoping
this.
that I wouldn't sound like a complete jerk.
No, you're sounding beautiful, and it's really amazing, because this is how Linda lives, is
Yeah.
by the people I met at her memorial. And I've had several of them, and we've continued this community because of her. It's
Inspired me. Such a
yeah,
brilliant woman. Such a brilliant
yeah,
woman.
yeah. And it's like when the Bob Dylan line, "Don't ever tell anyone everything you know." When I meet someone like you, wherever it is, and we start talking, I want to tell you everything I know, and I want you to tell me everything you know, because it's like, you know,
Yeah.
which is the irony is Dylan said he learned that in the Bible. Don't ever tell anyone everything you know. um but it does include this, what you fuse together in doing poetry is writing poetry, but you also perform it, or you recite it and you say it out loud.
And I
Yeah.
like to do it from memory more often than not,
Yeah.
because reading, I don't. Sometimes people can read to you and you can get it, but sometimes it just lulls you out, and
Yeah.
it's too easy just to hear the sound and lose track
Yeah.
of what's really saying. But if I can say it from memory and from the feeling that I felt when I wrote it, I'm more likely to communicate with the person, I think. And when people do that, they hold my attention and I keep more riveted on what they're saying.
Because first said the key is to bring the audience up onto the stage and into the scene with you. It is they who must give you even more than you give them in the way of imagination and creative power. So that sounds great, but how do you do that?
Well, the audience does give you everything. I mean, everything I ever wrote, I was terrified when I got up on stage and I thought, this is utter bullshit. And I would think, this just sucks. And I would go out there and I'd say, well, just get out there and give it a try. And then people would come up afterwards and say, what you said meant something to me. And then I would go, oh. And I didn't think anything I wrote was worth a damn until I presented it to an audience and people responded. And then I would know whether or not I just was stoned and thought I was clever, or if I had actually written something.
Beautiful. Because Leonard Cohen says the only way you can sell a concert is to put yourself at risk. And if you don't do that, people know.
Right. I've seen some concerts like that from people that really inspired me, that had blown me away before. And then the next time I went to see them, I went, well, that was a total waste of $80, you know?
But what role does risk play for you? Risk taking.
It's the magic of life. I've done some of the most riskiest. I moved to New York with three $20 bills, three suitcases, three bags of dresses, and did not even know it was dumb. And it worked.
That sounds like a one-woman show, the three motif. You know. What does courage mean to you now?
Doing what you think is important to do, whether it's easy or not.
Yeah.
Really, people that do things that everybody says don't, there, and it is something that's a gift to the world. I mean, that to me is the greatest thing.
Yeah. Well, Viola Spolin, who worked with sort of helped spawn improv in Chicago, comedy improv. She says, if the audience cannot see your struggle to achieve something, they cannot root for you to achieve it.
Right, right, right.
So how do you handle struggle?
Keep on keeping on. You just got to keep on doing it. That's all. I mean, how many times people feel like, oh, let's chuck it all in. What's it all about, Alfie? Let's just end it all. But then you think, I could do that tomorrow. Let's have a little bit of morbid curiosity and see what keeping on another day will do for us, you know?
But Kennon, where do you think you got that from? On your own? How your parents raised you? Something else?
I think some from this foundation of faith. One of my New York roommates in the 80s used to just say that old expression all the time, uh, life is shit and then you die and then it starts all over again. And, you know, he was really into reincarnation. And I thought, oh my God, if you have to start all over again, go through all the lessons again, I will never kill myself. Let me get through my lesson and figure out what it is. And I used to feel just in the hormonal phases of my life, just tortured and overwhelmed by everything. But now that I'm retired and I don't have to do anything but what I want to do, I love every day. And I'm so glad that, you know, I made it through that struggle because the struggle is what makes us, you know? Like
Yeah.
that little story about the butterfly, and one of my friends that I love, who's just a kick-ass spiritual being, she said, "You know, you've told me this story 4 times, but I love the story. I read it in some kind of, maybe Unity booklet or something about a guy on a park bench, and there's a cocoon, and he sees this butterfly struggling to get out, and he feels so sorry for it, struggling so hard, and he thinks, if I just lightly touch that little crack with my pinky, I'll give it a little bit of opening and make it easier for it to get it out. It'll be able, let me help. And the butterfly comes out, and because it didn't have the struggle to beat its way out of the cocoon, it's too weak to fly and it dies.
Yeah. Wow.
So one of the things
That's
that the greatest gift you can give to your friends is permission to make their own mistakes.
yes.
I'd always kind of want to get involved and help, and I have to remind myself, no, let people do it their own way. I'm not
Mhm.
always good at that, so
That's that butterfly also reminded me of one of McLuhan's favorite jokes is two caterpillars are on a branch and they watch a butterfly fly by. And one caterpillar says to the other, "You'll never get me up in one of those contraptions." Well, there's a jazz writer who said, I mean sound as it has long functioned among jazz players, as a mystical term of art, as in every musician finally needs a sound, a full and sensible embodiment of their artistic personality, such that it can be heard at best in a single note. So me and you might hear Miles Davis and go, oh, that's Miles, just with a couple notes.
right.
And Ben said, well, he's fragile and pointed. So he summarized him in 2 words. He said, Coltrane is slightly undercooked and urgent. If a writer was going to summarize Kennon's sound as a poet in a couple words, what 2 words would you go? They got it.
Oh, one of my friends told me recently when I was trying to help him out of a rough spot, how he didn't appreciate it. Well, he'd appreciated it even though it wasn't pleasant. He said, "You're my something like brutal angel or brutal sweetheart, something
Yeah,
like that, you know, a little bit
that's good.
bombastic, but very well-meaning.
Brutal angel, brutal. Yeah. And I had a homeless friend in Venice Beach. He used to go, angelic mind fuck.
Yeah, right, that's a good one. I don't know if I'm quite that talented, but I can grab somebody by the collar and shake them when they need it.
What was the motive of the cave artist?
To entertain themselves.
Yeah. Can you forget to die?
I wonder if we will remember when we do.
Yeah, that's very good.
I think we'll just be in the next place and go, "Wow, how could we not realize this was happening the whole time? How could
Yeah,
we think the other thing was it?"
that's good. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
I think it's 50-50.
Yeah,
You have to be committed, you have to have ideas, but and you have to know where you stand, and there's some things you probably shouldn't compromise over ever. But in general in life, there's a lot of compromising required to learn about yourself and to grow and to make things better.
yeah. You've accomplished a lot. How do you rate these three elements? Luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
I would say in the order you said them: luck, skill, and ambition. I was not probably as ambitious as I could have, should have been. I was not probably as skilled as I could have, should have been, but I was lucky.
Yeah,
I was intuitive, and things said, do this, go here, try that. And whether or not I had really put in the research or the reading or the knowledge or the practice or been the true artist devoted, intuition has taken me through my whole life really magically. I mean, I could tell you long stories that would blow your mind about the way things worked out of some kind of serendipitous synchronicity of mind blowing wow.
wow. Well, want to tell me one?
Well,
Well, by the way, there's, the great line applies is the more you practice, the luckier you get.
right. When I came to New York, when I left New York to come to LA, it was like that. When I left Atlanta to come to New York, I left with 3 days' notice. I stayed up for 3 days straight. And I told the person asking me to go like for months, no way, I'm not leaving Atlanta. I love Atlanta. No way. I'm not going to that filthy city. No. But then something clicked and I packed and I was gone.
Wow.
And it worked. Then when I was having no intention of leaving New York, not even considering it, three people called me on one afternoon within a 2-hour time span. People that I didn't speak to regularly or think about thinking about me that much. And they all called and said the exact same words. You know, I've been thinking about you for the last couple of weeks, and I'm not sure why, but I keep thinking you'd really like it out here in LA. And if you wanted to come out here, you could stay with me for a couple of weeks and check it out. So within 2 hours, there was 6 free weeks of someplace to stay and check it out. And then within another hour or two, another friend of mine called that I went to college with and one of my big acting inspirations. And he called and he said, hey, Kennon, I just got back from LA. I lived out there for the last 3 years. And, I kept thinking about you the whole time I was out there. I kept thinking you'd really like it a lot. Let me tell you how you can do an illegal sublet so you could just go out there and check it out and not lose your apartment.
Wow.
So I was like, several times in my life, I've gotten these really neon Western Union messages from God, where it's just like, whoa. And I really feel like it's like Western Union from God. Like, can you
Yeah.
tell I'm trying to tell you something? And I just go, well, I guess I better try this out. I'm being guided. I'm being led. And
Yeah.
coming here was a great decision.
And now you retire here and you get good weather.
Yeah. And if I hadn't, I don't know how I'd even be making a living if I was still in New York. I mean, you can't be. I was a performance artist. I was a bartender in the East Village dive bars. We put on our old shows. We had a blast. We were, making money, partying, and restaurant jobs. But you can't do that forever. You can't retire with that. And I wasn't even thinking about doing anything to secure my life. I've never done the get married, raise a child, own a home kind. I didn't even buy a car until I was like 41. And I didn't keep it but for 8 years.
Yeah.
I've always traveled light and gone the free spirit route.
That's very smart, because there's a great movie called Repo Man.
I love that movie.
Yeah, well, the line in it is so good. The more you drive, the less intelligent you are. That guy wrote a great line
That was
in a
a great
movie.
movie. I love that movie.
The more T.S. Eliot said poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
A little bit neurotic, but spiritually hopeful.
Oh, that's good. Two of my film heroes have a mantra. George Manupelli says, ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says, there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, a great jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle, and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
I liked what I heard Arlo Guthrie say on stage out at Rhodes Hall once. And he said, it's like, they asked him how he got all his great songs. And he said, it's like fishing. You've got to take time to sit by the bank and hold that pole. And if you're not sitting there waiting, you're not going to catch the fish. And God help you if you're fishing downstream of Bob Dylan.
That is good.
A lot of things just came to me. When I would write, I wasn't trying to be a writer.
Yeah.
Something came and I heard it and I had to write it down. Yeah. I never really was someone that, I know people that are really great writers, great poets in LA that really inspire me, but I was always kind of lazy. I never put a lot into it. If something came to me and I felt compelled, then I would do it. Otherwise, I'm like, I don't think I have anything to say today.
Yeah.
When I tried to write to be more prolific, I thought a lot of what I came up with was just garbage, So I know people that write every day and write something profound every day. Rich Ferguson, oh my God, he is just brilliant. Have you never interviewed him? That's someone to talk to.
I have. I've interviewed him and made films of his poetry. Yes,
he's brilliant.
He's brilliant. Can art making be egoless?
Can anybody be egoless in anything? I guess art is an area where you maybe be less easy to be no ego. I think a little bit of ego would make you want to be an artist, maybe, or find a need to express yourself artistically.
Well, I like your wondering, because 80-90% say no. And one person about a year ago said, great art is egoless. And then a couple months ago, someone said, it has to be egoless, But it's the big thing is the word ego has a lot of baggage. What it means.
Never get away from it. And if we think we have we really?
Yeah. I used to follow it up was Freud right?
Even when we do something to help somebody, I've questioned myself and go, okay, you did that. And people go, oh my God, you must be a saint that you did that for her. And I'm thinking, yeah but didn't I kind of do it too to make myself feel good about myself?
Hello. You are you've got a real great honesty to you. You're grounded, because I think this is what, back to that word truth or authenticity, or, honesty is that is the human condition, which you're describing, I think.
I just want to feel like I'm a decent person. And so
Yeah.
you can't buy your way into heaven. You can't paint your
Yeah.
way in there. You can't sing your way in there. They always say, it's all by grace, but we're
Yeah.
still trying on some way to feel good about ourselves or convince
Yeah.
ourselves that all those childhood insecurities were just, some childhood insecurity. But
Well, this works, perfect timing for this is Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
well, being a little too loud and too verbose and too self-expressive, if you can kind of get a little finesse over it, at times that can be helpful. You can, I took on the school district and my union when they screwed us over and rounded up 170 other subs and said, "Come on, let's go bite back," and we won. I took us to the Public Employment Relations Board, and you could go without a lawyer and represent yourselves. And for the first several months, I kind of did that. What do they call it? Pro per pro, where you represent yourself and the other people. And then they all just drove me crazy. And I said, "We got to get a lawyer. We'll never win. Y'all are driving me crazy." But we did win.
Wow. Way to go.
So and things that, like my father was kind of a human volcano, and he was always screaming, but he made me strong. I mean, almost nothing backs me down. I mean, he scared people saying hello, and almost nothing scares me. It made me very strong. People now are so coddling about, oh, and everything has got to be so, oh, my comfort zone, and oh, coddle the kids. And I'm like, you know, my dad made me fierce. He was kind
Wow.
of terrifying to a lot of people. And some people thought, oh, I think you grew up in an abusive situation. He was a great guy. He had a lot of different sides to him. But I am a pretty fucking fearless woman.
Wow. What was his career?
State cop
Wow. In Virginia?
in Virginia.
Wow.
He was a sergeant over 2 counties.
Is perception reality?
When you're stuck in it, sure. That's all you see. It's not, but people can have every opportunity and blessing. And if they don't see it, it's like gifts under the Christmas tree. It's there, but if you don't open it, you didn't get nothing that Christmas.
Yeah. Why is it so difficult for humans to consider the possibility that life might be pointless?
Because that just seems too boring.
Good answer. Lewis Carroll says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Yes. When I pray, you have to pray and believe.
Yeah.
And I had so many people going through such horrible times during the lockdown, and people that just seemed like sure on death's door and were not going to make it. And I prayed so hard, and I can't take credit for it. I mean, that sounds so ego filled. But one day out of the blue, a spiritual healer that I knew from years ago called me and said, I just want you to know your prayers are working. And we hadn't been talking. I hadn't told him I'd been spending an hour or two praying myself into a state of, you know, some kind of otherworldliness during the lockdown. What else did you have better to do with your time? But
Yeah.
even from a adolescent, there were times when I thought something and I thought, I'm going to pray and I'm going to pray so hard. I really want this to happen. Once I was like 11 and my dad was fishing and we've been out in the boat forever. And I said, God, please let Daddy catch a fish. He works so hard. He doesn't get to have much fun. He's always doing something for everybody else. He doesn't seem that happy. Really making him, God, please something to get. I must have prayed that hard for like 15 or 20 minutes. I had my head down on my knees, and I was just tired of sitting in that boat. And I had my arms wrapped around my knees, sit up in the seat. And the next thing I knew, my dad was like, "Hey, hey, Kennon, look!" And he had a 12-pound bass, and we had it for dinner. And I just remember thinking, well, I don't know what people say, but I'm gonna try that again. They might say there is no God and prayer doesn't work. I'm gonna keep trying that. And all through my life, when I have really thrown caution to the wind and prayed for something that when he was really angry and he just couldn't calm down, I just remember thinking, I am going to pray a fire hose of peace flooding toward him right through his forehead. And I'm just going to sit here and do that. And in 5 minutes, he calmed down. And I thought, again, well, that could be a coincidence, but I'm going to keep trying that.
I know.
Something told me, don't
Yeah.
say anything. You can't talk him out of this. I tried a few comments and it just made him angry, well, maybe you should try this. Or maybe just call them. And it just made him angry. And I just remembered, close your mouth. Sometimes all you can do is pray. And I just thought peace. And I sent it right to his third eye. And I just sat there and shut my mouth and kept thinking peace. And the next thing I knew, he sat back on the couch, relaxed, and started laughing and joking.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when these go well, Kennon, when I tear up or they tear up, and that really brought laugh tears to my face and my whole being. I really appreciate it. And like my mom taught me that when you cry, it's not just an emotional release, you're getting toxins out of your body through the tears. And I have to tell you 2 jokes, and it's not a rebuttal because I do pray too, but I mean, I don't know, in the big picture, most of our peers, don't pray. I don't,
No,
maybe they think, maybe they do. Most people, when I say, do you pray? Most people say, yeah, well, I really have to, because I got to get my car started. Please, God, have my car started. But our age group has sort of pulled away, like, well, I'm spiritual, I don't pray. And I'm like, hey, I pray. I'm like you, hey, if it works, why not? So Paul Krasner has these 2 jokes that are sort of,
I love him.
yeah, I thought you probably heard these, but no, one of them is Krasner. The little boy is at bat at Little League baseball, and he goes, please, God, let me hit a home run. And the pitcher goes, please, God, let me strike him out. And the clouds part, and God's voice goes, you superstitious fools.
Yeah, and it's really hard when people say, God saved my son, or God saved my husband, and people who had someone else who died in that same freak accident were like, so what, God didn't love my family member? There's so many ways to get mind fucked on all of that.
Right.
All I know is the more I try it, the more it works for me, so I keep going back to it.
Right. And then the other one is the guy falls off the side of the mountain. He's holding onto the cliff. And he yells, help, help. Is there anyone who can help me? And the clouds part, and God's voice goes, I can help you. Let go and I'll save you. And the guy goes, is there anyone else who can help me?
That's what Florence Scovel Shinn would teach, that if you wanted to make something unbelievable happen, you had to be willing to step off the cliff and feel your foot in the air and trust that God would slide a plate underneath of it. A Teutonic plate would slide out underneath of it. Yeah. And when I was reading her books, this was the other mind-blowing thing that happened. It was Wigstock, the big drag queen festival in Tompkins Square Park. It's pouring down rain. I had 2 friends that were musicians, one on keyboard, one on guitar. We were all dirt poor. They didn't even have cases for their instruments. And I had gotten them, they were playing music, and I was singing my poem that year at Wigstock. And we're going around and they're bitching. They're going, it's rain, it's going to be cold. And I'm like, no, it always happens, rain or shine. Nobody's calling off Wigstock. So we get around the corner, it starts pouring down rain. They start cussing me out. And they're like, we told you, now our instrument's going to go, we can't do this. And I'm like, no, I'll run back to the house. I'll get garbage bags, wait here underneath the awning. So I run back. One of the guys ran with me. We got the garbage bags. And before I walked out the door, I grabbed a bottle of suntan oil. And when we walked out, and I did this just because I'd been reading Florence Scovel Shinn's book, and every single person I passed in New York, which every step you take, you're passing 4 or 5, I
Yeah.
held up the bottle and I said, "Get your suntan oil out. The sun's coming out. Get your suntan oil out. The sun's coming." I said that 1,000 times within the next 2 blocks. I just said it over and over and over and over and over. We get to the awning, they put their instruments in the bags, we push our way through Tompkins Square Park. It's just crowded with people and umbrellas are everywhere. And every single person I pass, I put it up in their face. Get your suntan oil out. The sun's coming out. Get your suntan. And it's pouring down rain and it's gray. And people look at me like I'm nuts. I keep saying it with every conviction, with all the belief in my body. We get up to the stage. We're backstage. We have to go on after Lip Synca, one of the greatest performances.
Right.
And we're like, Lady Bunny just throws a couple of poets in there just for people who don't want to go on, and the other queens won't go on after her.
Yeah.
So it's our time to go on. They introduce me. We get out there, and my friends set up their instruments, and I walk out, and I still have the suntan oil in my hand. And as soon as I put one hand on the microphone stand, I swear to God, it was like a Cecil B. DeMille movie.
Woo!
Up like a spotlight, and it came down right on the front edge of the stage, and I lost it. I started jumping up and going, I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. I just lost it. It was so exciting. It was like, who thinks you can pray for God to change the weather in a moment? And it was only for the time that we were on stage, and then it started raining again later. But I mean, it just was one of the most exciting moments of my life. And that moment, if you ask for proof, and if you have faith and you believe and you try with all your heart, you can get some miraculous responses, not just to test or just for a moment for proof, but if in a moment you just experiment with something and you really believe, sometimes you can get the most amazing responses.
Let the sun shine in. What a story. Way to articulate it with such colorful language. You are truly a wordsmith supreme. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
I felt I was there under that awning,
They were not happy at the moment, but we had sun for our performance.
That is so cool.
I think the poem I did that time was called A Message to the Masses, and it was a rocker.
Wow. Tell me one major element of your creativeness as both a poet, a performer, and an educator, one major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed in the decades you've been doing this.
Regarding the poetry performance?
Well, you can put it in every poetry, your creativeness. Yeah.
What has changed and what has stayed the same?
Or just your life in life in general, however you want to put it, whatever context.
Well, what would be the running thread? Just trying to make myself and others around me happy.
Yeah.
Something that would either lift a misery or add a dash of delight.
Yeah.
And that has always been a motivating factor in pretty much everything. Something that might have changed is that I don't want to sound fatalistic for the world, but I no longer feel like it's important if anybody remembers me or hears me or knows. I mean, I would like to maybe one day put a collection of my poetry together, which I have always been too lazy to do. I would like to think that I could leave something that was worth remembering, worth people remembering.
Yeah.
But if I never got up and did another poem, and if I never put out a book of poetry, and if no one remembered me when I died, right now I'm just happy that I'm retired. And when I used to really be on a mission to try to save the world and worry that I hadn't done enough. And one of my friends would say, well, if you were supposed to be Jesus Christ or Dr. Martin Luther King, don't you think God would have made that clear by now? So don't have all that weight on your shoulders, And then I began to think, well, it's all too late. It's all over but the crying. We're really circling the drain now. So really just enjoy it. Maybe your whole point of this life was just to be here and learn how to just relax and enjoy it no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And I saw something on PBS the other night that, used to be just like the kids at school used to say, doesn't it look like all those continents used to be puzzle pieces together? And the thing on PBS was like, yes, it was. It was called, what is it? I forget the name. They said it's some Patagonia, Pangea, something I forget.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Earth changes and goes through huge revolutions, even when we weren't here to mess things up.
Yeah.
Just let it all go. Just let it
Yeah.
all go and see what happens.
Wow, that's exactly what we're making a film on right now, is archiving, preservation. Why do we, I mean, if Ram Dass is right, be here now.
Right.
And Wyndham Lewis said, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. Why do we need to preserve anything? Just live for the moment, And we like to reflect, and your point on repetition earlier was really important. But it is interesting about this tendency for humans to create, and then why do we have to preserve it? Just create and move on. The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can.
Who did I see something just the other day? Oh, some inspirational person, and they were giving people directions. Sing your song, do it, whether it's good or not. Write the best poem you can, put every effort you can into it, then tear it up and throw it away and realize that was enough.
That's enough. Yeah. That's Oscar Wilde said, even bad poetry can be sincere.
Right.
We're in this community where, like, well, how do people judge? What's the rating for, I'm in experimental film. Experimental film and poetry is, who can rate whether this is good or bad? It's not, it's just like, if it moves people, that's what's important. Then as soon as you get this sort of aesthetic rating system, it's like, but I'm curious. Go ahead.
A group of psychics for a while, and group meditations and things. And I'd had some psychic experiences even as early as 7. So I kind of got involved with a group of people to see if you could learn to develop it. And
Yeah.
One of them told me once, Kennon, you don't need to save every single scrap of paper that you've ever laid hands on. She said, you do that because you were a monk in another lifetime, and it took so much effort for everything to be copied over by hand that you still have that left over in this lifetime. But I literally have almost every single letter that was ever sent me. I have boxes and boxes of letters. I have journals that are stuffed in every nook and cranny behind pieces of furniture. I have almost every card that was ever given me. I archive things in photos. I have tended to want to, and I have it like, if I turn this around, you would just see mementos, and eye candy, and things that. And one of my friends once said, just because I give you something, you don't have to keep it. You can throw it away if you want. And then I, in recent years, have given myself permission to throw away a lot of stuff and going, okay, if the only way you're remembering this person is because you're keeping this little tchotchke or a little postcard or something, see if you can remember them even without that, and let's let this go. Maybe somebody else can use it,
That's such an amazing thing, what you just said. It's really important. And there's a line that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, says, you are what you hate. James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. Excuse me. And Louis Buñuel said, thank God I'm an atheist. So your thoughts on this line. I'm not saying you, Kennon, you create what you resist. One creates what one resists. Any thoughts on that line?
You follow your focus always. And some of the most spiritual people I know have been atheists, and it's the most, inspiring people. So whatever you focus on, you're going to get more of it. The universe goes, oh, that's what you're focused on. Let's send more of that.
Yeah. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
I'm not sure there's as many differences as we think. And this whole thing about changing your sex to match what sex you think you are, I think in some ways it's like, why does a woman have to be one thing? And if you're not that thing, you have to change your sex.
Yeah.
Why can't all of it be everything and anything? I've often felt I was very much male energy inside me, but I love being a woman. I'm a straight female. I love so many feminine things, but there's sometimes I felt like I was my father's only son.
Yeah.
So, I don't think, I'm not sure God gets that many people in the wrong body,
Yeah.
but we get wrong ideas about ourselves. And I'm not saying people don't need to or
Yeah.
shouldn't have
Yeah.
a sex change, but it confuses me as much as I have lived among gay people and in
Yeah.
loving gay people. I get confused on that. I get way confused on that.
What caused matriarchy?
Having babies.
Yeah. How do you find peace of mind?
Pray and meditate.
Yeah.
Singing old hymns. Nothing
Oh,
makes me happier. I wake up in the morning after I do a little meditation book reading. Sometimes I might read some from the Bible. Praying, I get too carried away with, so I don't do a long prayer every day. Sometimes it's just a quick thank you and got to move on. But taking time to go through an old hymnal and sing one or two old hymns every day just brings me joy. It lifts me up. And that sounds so corny. That's something almost nobody knows about me that would see me out in the everyday world. It's something I started doing in the last year. But I would go to churches and I'd be devoted to them for a while, and then they break my heart, and I get so disappointed by them. And then I'd think, well, what is it I really miss about being in church? And then sometimes they're just like a waste of time, like a game show. Sometimes they'll be an inspirational minister, but then they retire and somebody else comes and you're like, oh my God, former house of God, get away from me. And then I realized what I really missed was singing those old time hymns that just really made me feel a certain way. And I was
yeah.
like, get a hymnal. You can do that at home.
Wow. Utah Phillips said, anarchy is making rules for yourself and not other people. Who's entitled to make the rules?
The self for the self. That's
Yeah.
life. And if anything else, you got bamboozled, you got bought, you got whatever else Malcolm said, it's
Yeah.
always your choice. You might not always know it, but it's always your choice.
Yeah. Nassim Taleb said, games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. In response, someone said, well, villains don't think they're bad.
Right.
They want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson says, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, oh, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, oh, I did something morally or socially wrong? It's a lot of prompts, but basically the question is, does punishment work?
Shame is a poor teacher.
Wow.
It helps keep you down. I was raised by a very strong disciplinarian. I believed in it, for a while, especially when I first started teaching. I'm like, somebody needs to get a hold of these kids and get their damn attention. But then I realized that I didn't want to be that same kind of person. And yet I'm really sick of all the coddling and, oh no, like the extreme madness to me was when they at one school said, oh, we're not going to put up the work of the high achieving kids in the hallways anymore because it'll make the kids that make no effort feel bad. And I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you need to be pushed out of your comfort zone. Sometimes you need to sit there and go, I suck a little bit. Why don't I make an effort? Why don't I do something different? I just think it's a fine balance, if it's all putting down. And people have made me groan by kicking me out of class. You're late. You can't be in this class ever again. People have done hardcore things and disciplinary things that I grew from. So I know that you can grow from that. But it's the people that make you feel like you can keep moving forward and improving that really, I think, help you not give up on yourself.
Yeah. That's beautiful. McLuhan says, how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough or a rejection into a redirection? Okay, these are 5 quick Alan Watts questions.
Okay. So
After the
say,
okay.
how do you do that? Is that the question? How do you do
Oh,
that?
no. Yeah, I was just saying that as a side comment, but you can
Right,
comment on it. Yeah. It's like, you when someone tells you you did something wrong, you turn that criticism
right,
into a breakthrough.
right, exactly. Well, you grow from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Without them, you're just gonna be stagnant.
Yeah, it's like, Sam Beckett said, "Fail once and then fail again better."
Right. Yeah, I like that.
So these are 5 Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head in a couple words. 1, who started it all?
The snake.
Are we going to make it?
Yes.
Where do we put it?
Stop storing it.
Wait, I missed that. Stop?
Stop storing it. You don't have to put it anywhere. Just let it be.
That is good. 4,
You know
who's
what they say, you
cleaning?
can't have everything. Where would you put it?
Yeah, hello. 4, who's cleaning it up?
The women.
5, is it serious?
Always and never.
Oh, that is good. That's Frank Zappa said, "I'm very serious about being not serious."
Right.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
It's gonna be okay.
Yeah. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over. I had a friend who used to love to go into people's houses and switch it around on them. If he stayed for 3 days, he would switch it every day. Never bring it up in conversation. Wait and see how long it took him to say something.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
No idea.
That's actually a good title. I have no idea. They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Lavender.
Nice. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Ah, well, places I love, I wouldn't want to mar with a statue of me. Some place that was maybe tedious, I'd maybe put it there to cheer people up. Maybe make it out of old toys.
Oh, old toys is a great. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Oh, maybe being married.
Good, never had it, never want it. Boy, that's a good answer. If you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I would get out of the vat.
I'm glad you laughed. I knew you were tough. You could handle that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. I touched something. Now I can't see the screen. Can you still see me?
Oh yeah.
Okay, then I won't worry
Let's
about it.
see.
I can't see you anymore. I don't know what I
Yeah.
touched, but I messed something up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, we got about 7 more minutes. This has been so fun, and I really had a ball, and I learned a lot. Couple more, and we're out of here. Okay, what's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
What I see does not inspire me. Every once in a while, I'll hear that something environmental to solve a problem that makes actual sense. Sometimes I hear things that they say, and I'm like, well, that's not going to help. Sometimes I think I get when I think about the cultural shift, it just makes me think Armageddon is coming soon. I really think people are getting lost. I hate to say it, but I do.
Yeah. But Kennon, what impresses me is your sense of humor and has so much hope and humor in it, but at the same time, you're grounded in reality and you can roll your eyes. So Steve Allen said, behind every joke, there's a grievance.
Right.
What's the function of laughter?
I think it's the best teaching tool there is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Humor is the best way to make people learn and grow.
Yeah. Well, I asked my friend who wrote comedy with Robin Williams, Ken
That's
said,
exactly who I was thinking of. My favorite phase of him. And I started to say that and I thought, no, keep it short. But that's who exactly I was thinking of. My favorite phase of him was not his stuff, but when he was political, there was nobody better. Will Rogers. I love Will Rogers.
yeah,
You can learn through humor better than telling them, don't you realize we're like circling the drain and Armageddon is like a breath away and you can't stop stoking the engine hard enough? But you tell people that and they're like, oh, but
yeah.
you know, you to make a
That's
joke about it and then they'll go, aren't we ridiculous to be that way? And then they think, maybe I could change a little bit.
yeah,
I often wish if I had been a stand-up comedian. I think they really do a great job when they were funny. Like I like to watch old Ed Sullivan's and Tonight shows when stand-up comedy was funny and not just gross and foul. And
yeah.
there's some
Oh
people
yeah,
that still do it, and there's
yeah,
some people that are gross and foul and still teaching in a worthy, valid way. But it used to be a lot more clever.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's what Lenny Bruce learned from Lord Buckley is turn joke telling into storytelling.
That's the
And
best.
yeah, and when I asked my friend who wrote for Robin Williams, can satire be destructive? He said that's the job of satire.
Yeah.
But if me or you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill us, some people think dying is destructive. But Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. Frank Zappa sang a great line. He said, watch the Nazis run your town. Now go home and check yourself. You think we're singing about somebody else. What's the function of satire?
Hopefully to get people to catch themselves in that moment where they realize it is about them, because we always see everybody else's faults but our own. I mean, ours are the last to see, and what we accuse the other person of, what we're the angriest to other people about, is usually something we're chief culprits of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one more. I want to go into a couple more things. And McLuhan said it's misleading to suppose there's any difference between education and entertainment. It's always been true, whatever pleases teaches more effectively.
Right. Which
How
is
do
why
you,
I think I did good as a substitute teacher, because I always tried to make it more theatrical and
yeah,
make the lessons more about trying to make it, easy to pay attention.
yeah. So that was the question. How did teaching shape your behavior? How did poetry shape your behavior?
Well, first teaching taught me more than I taught the kids. I was
Yeah,
always learning more about how to improve my communication skills, how to find a way to get people motivated, other than the ways that you think are the right ways. Poetry, I think it helped me love myself more.
wow, that is heavy.
When you don't have a long-term marriage or something like that to look to, I think I told my parents once, I guess you guys must think I'm gay. I'm never really in a relationship, but I think it's made me closer to God. I think it's made me have to, learn to love myself more. And they looked at me like I was crazy. But, your friends and the fleeting relationships that you do have, uh, they can be enough if you have a decent relationship with yourself. I've heard
Yeah,
ministers speak about if you don't have a long time marriage or something, then you're broken. You don't know how to have a relationship. But I have really long friendships. I just not have ever been in any long married kind of thing.
yeah.
But you have to learn to love yourself.
You're really articulate, and I love it because you're not talking in this language that's not understandable. It's very real. It's sort of like going back to when you talked about poetry. It's like Yeah, I just tell it like it is in my poetry. I don't try to use these like metaphors and like just get to the point already.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. Let me make it really clear for you.
Get to the point.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
it goes with these last couple questions. Is Thornton Wilder, who wrote Our Town. He said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
Just trying to make myself a better person and to uncover all those things in me that are unkind. There's plenty of them.
Yeah.
Or that think I know something and pop off and say something I shouldn't say sometimes, and it takes me a long time to realize, oh, well, maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. But I always worry that I've offended someone or done something, and I know it's okay. You have to offend people in life, but for me, and I'm pretty good at offending people. I piss off a lot of people without trying to, but really my desire is hopefully not doing that. One, my friend Henry took me to go look for a car, and the woman gave me some car that I thought was cool, and it went around the block and overheated before we got halfway around the corner. And when we got back to the dealership, I told the woman, there's something wrong with this car. It overheated right away. And she said, well, you just obviously don't know how to drive. At which point I gave her a good piece of my mind. And when we were walking out with my friend Henry, who's the most polite person I've ever known, I said, oh, Henry, did I embarrass you? I hope I didn't embarrass you, popping off with that woman like that. He said, well, no, but now she knows more about you than you know about her. So I just, try to think about how my thinking might be opposite of other people that are hearing me, just mouth off at times, and how something I say might really not be, should have maybe thought a little more before I said that in front of somebody that I didn't consider their situation.
Yeah, it reminds me of two lines. I worked for George Carlin for half a year, and we got this piece of mail for a flyer for some comedy workshop, and it says, I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity.
He was one of the greatest comedians and greatest teachers ever. He really did a lot. Brilliant, brilliant man.
And then Gurdjieff said, laughter is the reconciliation of yes and no.
Oh, that's good.
And I like it because in the middle of reconciliation, there's the word silly. Reconciliation. What gives you the most optimism?
Waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
As I get older, I've kind of like, it's only in the last year when I realized so many people I love were going with no warning, and I realized, well, you don't know. And it's become more real to me that I don't know from day to day how many more days I have. Even though I'm healthy and I have a good life, I just wake up in the morning and go, thanks, I'm here again.
Yeah.
We can do it this day. And a lot of times I don't do very much with it, but I enjoy it.
Yeah. It's important, and it's been essential for me to hear all this positiveness. I grew up with parents, accent the positive, power of positive thinking. But look at when people actually walk the walk and speak the talk, you do it well. And it's really been fun. The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being? And Wilhelm Reich said the best thing for a human being is another human being.
Yes.
And the last question is, what gives you the most optimism? That's what I got from what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. And he said, other people. So it's sure been fun spending this time with another person, especially because it's you, Kennon. Thank you so much. Really been.
I enjoyed it so much, Jerry. I was nervous and I thought, oh, I'm going to make a fool of myself. But you made it very easy, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk to, and I enjoyed it very, very much. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, but I hope our discussion never ends and we can party hardy for the forever and ever. I look
forward to it, and to Susie too.
Yes, to keep this dialogue going forever and ever. Thank you, Kennon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.